Africa. We were so worried coming to this continent, mostly due to ignorance because we just don't know enough.
Before we came to South Africa, we knew very little about Africa in general, and we were significantly concerned.
But we really didn't have anything to be worried about. One of the very favorite things we've done here, and not just in South Africa, but in our entire trip, is go on a safari in the Kruger National Park.
The Kruger National Park here in South Africa was proclaimed as a wildlife reserve by President Paul Kruger around the 1900s. It only gained national park status at around 1929.
The biodiversity in Kruger is just extraordinary. If you're looking for birds, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, plant life, Kruger's got it all.
Kruger is so large that even with 4 days of driving around, we only got to see about 20%, actually probably a little bit less.
We were very fortunate to find out about African Big Five safaris.
Hunters in the old days referred to the Big Five as the 5 most dangerous animals to hunt in Africa.
Now the Big Five are lion, leopard, rhino, elephant and buffalo.
There's a big possibility that it's likely to see all 5 on a 4-day trip within Kruger National Park, but animals don't read books, and clearly we don't book them, so whatever you see will depend a lot on luck.
We took a 4-day, 3-night private safari with Marcel and Retief.
You're up at 5 a.m. and you're out at the gate waiting for the gate to open before 6 a.m.
Well, typical itinerary would be to spend as much time out in the bush as possible.
From there we do morning drives, afternoon drives, maybe full day drives, stopping for picnics and having a lovely braai at night.
On the very first day on our afternoon game drive, right after we left the gate, we come across these cars parked on the road.
And Marcel stopped to ask them what they were looking at. And they said, "Didn't you see it? It was a leopard. He just crossed the road and went into the trees."
Leopard? Where is he? Walking off the back, too far away from you guys.
So we stopped and we waited and we saw nothing.
Right, you know, it's very nice of him telling me, but it doesn't help me one bit, you know. But I know I would do the same thing. I would also say that, oh, you won't believe, oh, there is some zebra there.
Then later on the same game drive on the way back, another car had stopped and said exactly the same thing. "Did you just see the leopard?"
Oh, I cannot believe this. Twice.
Did you see the leopard?
Twice. Never in my life has that happened.
We waited as long as we could with the gate closing.
No, sorry guys. We just had some more time.
And no leopard.
After that, every single game drive, we were looking for a leopard.
That began a theme for our whole 4 days, which is Marcel promising us a leopard and us teasing him when we don't get one. We would see the most amazing sights, and then we would fake disinterest and go, "Yeah, that was nice and all, but Marcel, you promised us a leopard." We came across an oxpecker getting up close and personal with an impala.
And 2 hyenas that were right out on the road. One of them walked up the road towards us, looked at us for a while, and then crossed the road and took off. Every time we saw something incredible, we teased him mercilessly.
We got so close to some of the elephants. Sometimes they were right outside of our car door.
And what's she doing there? That's what we call, sometimes we call it, well, that could be just getting some dust off the branches, off the grass. But often what they'll do is they'll mock feed. See, like that, she's just getting the dust off the roots, and now she will be eating it. But often you'll see them putting grass in their mouths, and they'll just let the grass fall out. They chew, but nothing's going in, because it's deciding whether you're a threat or not. So it just wants to pretend as if it's eating. But you see it so clearly that food doesn't go in. But by that shaking, she's just getting the dust and mud off it.
We were watching a fish eagle.
Just up the branch there, we've got a Bateleur eagle.
Now it's an adult, and which is what's quite interesting is
What was that?
that is a very, very angry elephant.
And Ariel was like, let's go look! And Marcel was like, oh no no.
And that means we need to be very careful, because as you can hear, that elephant is quite enraged. But I'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Why are they so angry?
No dents in their car.
Yeah.
Maybe they tried to force their way past the herd.
That could,
There's one right there.
yeah, but you see now.
Yeah, more on this side.
Oh, look, a little young one. The problem with this is we're inside of the herd now. So they enclose us.
So that's probably what happened in that car.
Yes. Or you cut off a youngster.
Females, do they ever charge? I mean,
Oh yes, they're actually the ones that are more likely to charge. But you can quickly tell the mood of an elephant. Like you can see, she's feeding, she's showing you, you know, I'm relaxed, I'm eating, I'm okay with you guys. As soon as she shows me, you know, she's at all uncomfortable with our presence, I will give her her distance and respect her wishes, you know. Like if it looks like she wants to come over, I'll get out of her way, because in the end, this is obviously her domain.
what are the ear things? Is that just
The ears have got a lot of arteries in them, or a capillary network, as we say.
so it's a heat sink?
So yes, the heat distributes a lot of blood to there, and by flapping it cools the blood. When they fan them out, spraying them out, that just makes them to look big, and they're warning you, you know. Not exactly like that, that's still fanning. The other warning sign is if you see behind the eye, it looks almost as if her temples are leaking. And now there's a temporal gland. Now if there's fluid streaming out of there, that means she's irritated or frustrated, or something has happened, maybe came across lions and she's a bit angry. I'm just gonna give her a bit more space here.
I'm gonna take a couple pictures in the light. Got the wrong lens on because she's so close. But
Do you want my camera?
actually, no. Can you pull forward just maybe 5 meters? Oh, it's coming anyway.
I'm just going to do a turn like this, so you get back into the same position.
That's
How's that?
yeah.
I would guess 30s. The best way to age an elephant is actually if you could feel the teeth.
If it was just Arlo and I driving around the park, we would have never realized what we saw. But luckily we had Marcel and Retief right there with us.
This is excellent. I'm so
Yeah,
glad
this
we
is
got these areas.
Very rare to get big tusks.
These are like walking legends.
Yes,
The stories that they can tell you about Kruger.
you can Google Duke and you'll read the legend of this guy.
If it is Duke, but I think, I don't know any other big tuskers with 2 broken tusks. But that other guy as well, I reckon that's up to a 40-year-old bull.
He's also one of the tuskers, definitely. I wonder who it is. It all started with 7, the Magnificent 7. And then they started the program. I think they're around maximum of 20 maybe.
It's almost like you want to see these elephants, you'd like to say hello sir or
Yeah,
hello uncle, because they're ancient.
I have so much respect for these guys.
Gentle giants.
Retief. Jy weet bietjie beter wanneer dit is tyd is om te ry met 'n olifant, so sê my net, okay?
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's okay, he's just staring at us.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. We were in this park. Yes, he really didn't budge. I thought he was going to go around the bush. That's the thing about the old bulls, you know.
Yeah.
He saw we were here first on the road. We had right of way. He just asked us, well, will you move, please? Younger bull would have been cheeky.
Did your hearts pound a bit with that guy walking up to
It
you?
was cool. No, I guess I trust you guys too much not to put us in any kind of danger, so I'm not worried about that.
What also stood out was Oksana's excitement to every single giraffe that we come across.
Personally, for me, the whole Africa was about seeing a giraffe. From being a little kid, that's what I've always thought as an African animal.
When we finally saw one, he was hiding behind a tree, and we waited for over 20 minutes for him to just come out in the sunlight, but he just sat there staring at us.
I've never seen a giraffe stand still for this long.
It wasn't doing very much, but I was so excited. I saw my first giraffe out in the wild. I was happy. I thought, okay, I saw a giraffe. That is awesome. I will probably not see another one.
But it's just to start working out dominance hierarchies between the males. But these are two youngsters, and it's not a serious fight. I've seen where one has hit the other one at the base of the skull, and he hits him out clean.
Wow.
Yeah, like a complete knockout.
By the end of 4 days, we saw probably 50 different giraffes in the park.
I saw more giraffes than I ever imagined possible. It was like being a little kid again and getting an ice cream cone.
Because there's so many people, so we saw so many springbok, but these are in fact impalas. Easily identifiable by that black M that you see there on the bum.
I was absolutely blown away when on our second day on the evening drive, right before sunset, Arlo spotted a cheetah.
I remember exactly what I did. I went, wait a minute, stop the car. Marcel stops and starts backing up, and I'm like, is that a, it's a cheetah. And he's like, no.
That's awesome. This is the rarest cat in the park you are viewing right now.
A few minutes later, it laid down, completely disappeared. If we had passed by just a minute sooner or later, we never would have seen it.
Oh, there's another one. This most likely, if it's two males, it would be a coalition, which is quite rare to see.
So Marcel is probably more excited than us because he knows how rare an event this is. We don't.
I'm having a small heart attack here. Oh my gosh.
I was speechless. They actually started to cross the road. They stopped right in the middle of the road and they looked back at us.
Right at that moment, my memory card fills up, and I perform the world's fastest memory card swap. After that, they slowly walked off into the sunset. With one look back to us, they went down into a gully and we never saw them again.
Cheetah. Really?
Awesome.
Can you imagine a guide who does this for his job and is out there all the time in the park is so excited to see a cheetah?
Yes! That was amazing. My heart is racing faster than a cheetah can run, which is 120 kilometers per hour, by the way. Wow!
Retief wasn't with us for that game drive, so when we got back to camp that night, Marcel was like, let's tease him a little bit. So I went back and he's like, so how was the drive? And I said, oh, it was pretty good. You know, we saw another rhino and there was an elephant up close to us eating by the car. That was neat. And oh, I got a good picture. Here, let me show you. And I swung the camera around and showed him the best picture we had of the cheetah. And he just kind of went, are you kidding me? No, seriously, are you kidding me? I'll bet you no one else saw a cheetah today.
Fortunately, until thus far, they didn't see a leopard, but I can guarantee you will get one. At least its tail.
I don't personally like camping all that much, but let me tell you, spending a night inside the Kruger National Park at the campsite is something else.
We had cots with pads, nice warm blankets. On a cold night, it was very warm. It was everything we could want and more. This is going to be nice.
So every night when we came back to camp, Retief had the most delicious dinner cooking on the braai for us.
The food, we'd like to call it traditionally South African, but we try to incorporate everything we do with a braai. So it will be lots of meat, a lot of vegetables, throw in a couple bottles of wine, whatever you like to drink, and we'll make one big feast out of it.
My favorite were the boerewors, the farmer's sausages.
Typically your meals would all be what a normal South African would have when he comes out to Kruger.
Night in camp was one of my favorite times.
The camp settles down, everything starts to get quiet. You might have the opportunity to spot a few animals close to the camp fence.
We had a hyena pass within 2 meters of us, looking at us right on the opposite side of a chain link fence. One of my favorite moments was shining a light out there and seeing 2 tiny green eyes looking back at me. Retief identified it as a genet, a small cat-like creature, and he said that they can easily get into the camp if they want.
Sometimes you hear things that you cannot possibly identify.
One of the benefits of having a guide there with you while you're in the camp is that they can identify the sounds outside the camp at night.
Retief has an incredible talent of being able not only identify every sound that he hears in the Kruger National Park, but he can also imitate them. You hear these noises, the sounds that are so different from anything you hear in the city. You hear a lion roar, you hear a leopard take an impala.
I also heard a bush baby for the first time, and I can't describe how creepy they sound.
Literally, sounds like a baby crying. And right after that, we hear lions roar, and your mind goes crazy.
On the third day, I found myself scanning every tree that went by, looking for a leopard, hoping against hope that we would mark our 5th of the big 5 animals. It got to the point almost where I wasn't enjoying the things that we did see just because they weren't a leopard. So I had to force myself to give up, basically, and just take the day as it came and enjoy whatever animals we saw.
Game viewing.
We were driving probably 40 kilometers an hour over a dirt road.
We were going pretty fast because we were searching for that leopard. It was the last animal on the big 5 list. So all of a sudden, I thought that I saw cat ears.
And we back up and it's a cheetah in the shade on a hill under a tree, almost lost in the background. We have no idea how she saw it.
That is ridiculous.
Oh, looks the other way. Oh, it's such a beautiful animal. Hear that, hear that. It might do it again.
It makes a bird-like sound. It doesn't roar or anything. Oh, see what he's doing.
Male.
He's marking.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just Retief your ears off. Oh, he's going into the sun.
Wait up. What's your
That's where I put the cat box. I'm gonna roll backwards very slowly.
Stop trying to get in front of him.
We thought he was going to leave, but he starts marking his territory and he goes around to all the big trees in the area.
He's going to go back. Someone's going to catch us.
Oh, no, unfortunately, you're gonna hate me. Stand up.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Since we spent a little too much time watching that second cheetah, we were a little late getting back to the gate. We had a long drive ahead of us and it was getting dark, and Marcel and Retief were a little worried we weren't going to make it on time. Wouldn't you know it, that's when we saw our leopard.
And all of a sudden, Marcel goes, and there is your leopard. At first, we didn't believe him. We're like, what?
And we're scrambling to get our cameras out because we put them away because it was pretty dark. And there on the side of the road was a leopard. He crossed right in front of us in our headlights, moved off into the grass, and left. We waited around to see if he'd come back, but of course he didn't. And Marcel explained later that most of your interactions are just that. You see them, and they're gone. But seeing that leopard on that day meant that we had seen all 5 of our African Big 5 animals.
In one day. How cool is that?
So on the last day, I was really hoping we would see lions, but I didn't expect it. We had been in the park for 4 days and we hadn't seen any except from a far distance. But we had been hearing them all night and we knew they were close to the camp. Marcel let us out. We were the 3rd car out of the gate, and so fortunate for us, the lions were literally right there.
Oh, it's that flame.
A big male gets up and walks right up to the cars within 10 meters and plops himself down and starts roaring. We were prepared to spend our whole last morning watching just them, until some idiot ruined it for all of us.
Oh, see somebody who's being. Oh, he's getting out of his stupid car.
This guy, who had a better view than us, decides he wants to get out of his car and sit on his window frame. As soon as the lion saw it, it got up and ran away. 15 cars parked, hoping to get a shot of a lion, and this guy scares him off.
What happened?
happened? He just plopped down.
Right next to the other one. The guide is the one who either makes it the most fabulous and fantastic thing you've ever done in your whole life, or it could be the person who ruins the whole experience.
When we started this safari, we had no idea what to expect, but we ended it with 2 new friends in Marcel and Retief. I can't recommend a safari with them enough.
Once you have a passion like I do, you know, about nature and everything that is in it, it almost feels unnatural to just keep it to yourself. You know, you want to share it with somebody. I've found in my experience that when I share something, it's even more beautiful or more fun or more adventurous when there's someone just standing there right next to you.
Well, it's a really fulfilling job. It offers you a lot of adventure. You have the opportunity to stay in really wild wilderness areas and being able to teach people new stuff, interesting stuff that they like. That's really a fulfilling thing.